Monkey D. Garp. This is a man who watched genocide happen, served under slave owners, and watched his own grandson die, and still, he chose the Marine side. And that's what makes it hard for us to understand Garp's decision. Garp might be the greatest failure in all of One Piece, a man strong enough to change the world, who failed to do it. And somehow, that failure might be the reason the world changes anyway. When we first meet Monkey D. Garp, loud, reckless old man who falls asleep mid-conversation, eats crackers while dropping life-changing information. He's introduced as comic relief before he's introduced as a legend. And once the story starts peeling that back, what we're left with is honestly one of the most impressive reputations in One Piece. This is the man who cornered Gul D. Roger countless times. The man the entire world calls the hero of the Marines. And Oda does a really smart job making that title feel earned. Garp isn't portrayed like the other Marines. He openly disrespects the Celestial Dragons. He refused the rank of Admiral multiple times because Admirals directly serve them. He laughs when Luffy punches one. He insults kings to their faces. He does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. For a long time, Garp felt like proof that there were still good people inside the system. Like maybe the Marines were corrupt, sure, but men like Garp were the reason the whole thing hadn't collapsed. And I think that's exactly why his contradictions works. Because the image Oda builds first is not a government dog. It's a lovable old hero with enough freedom to say no. Which means when Garp chooses the system later, it doesn't feel like obedience. It feels like a decision. And that makes everything so much worse. The first time that image really starts to crack is Ace's execution at Marineford. For a lot of people, this was the moment Garp stopped being the lovable old man. Because for the first time, Oda forces Garp to choose between the institution he's spent his whole life serving and his own family. Garp doesn't really choose either. He sits beside Ace and tells him he doesn't pity him because he chose the life of a pirate. But then, in the same breath, you can feel how broken he is. He asks Ace why he couldn't just live the way he was told. This is not just anger. This is desperation. Regret. A man watching his worst fear happen in real time. Then Luffy shows up. Garp stands in his way. But when the moment actually comes, Garp folds. He lets Luffy hit him. And in doing that, he chooses family in the weakest way possible. Not by saving Ace, just by refusing to stop Luffy from trying. Marineford is such a perfect summary of Garp's character. He fails both sides. He doesn't fully uphold justice. He doesn't save his family. He chooses duty until the last possible second, then abandons it too late to matter. And when Ace dies anyway, all that hesitation becomes meaningless. The Marines still kill Ace. The family still loses him. And Garp is left carrying both failures at once. This is the first time Oda really shows us what Garp is. Just a man so trapped between who he is and who he wants to be that he ends up doing nothing. And if Marineford was the first crack in Garp's image, God Valley might completely shatter it. Because in this moment, don't just show Garp failing to act, they show him walking directly into one of the worst atrocities in One Piece history and still choosing the wrong target. What happened at God Valley is horrifying. The Celestial Dragons were literally hunting innocent people for sport, a genocide disguised as entertainment. Garp knew enough to understand what kind of field trip this was before he even got there, but when he arrives, his eyes go straight to Roger. Meanwhile, Dragon sees the exact same horror, and it changes the course of his entire life. Dragon saves civilians. Dragon threatens his own superiors. Dragon eventually leaves and starts a revolution. Garp sees the same bodies, the same corruption, the same monsters behind the curtain, and he goes back to work again and again. Marineford could be read as paralysis, family conflict, emotional weakness. God Valley feels like ideology. Garp thinks his mission matters more than humanity. And whether that mission is preserving order, hunting pirates, or holding the system together, the result is the same. Dragon leaves, believing the system must be destroyed. Garp stays believing it can still be preserved. And from that moment on, the entire monkey family becomes three different answers to the same question: revolution, reform, or freedom. So the obvious question is, why? Why does Garp stay? Why does a man who openly hates the Celestial Dragons keep wearing the uniform that protects them? Why does a man strong enough to challenge the world keep choosing to live under it? And I think the simplest answer is that Garp genuinely believes the Marines are necessary. Garp has spent his whole life seeing what pirates do to ordinary people. And One Piece sometimes makes us forget this because our perspective is so shaped by Luffy, Whitebeard, and the good pirates. But most pirates are not Luffy. Most pirates pillage, kill, enslave, and destroy. To Garp, the Marines are the only real wall standing between civilians and chaos. That's why he refuses the admiral rank. He doesn't want to serve the Celestial Dragon directly. He wants the freedom to keep doing what he believes actually matters, protecting people from the uglier parts of the sea. In Garp's mind, the system is rotten but necessary. And honestly, that belief is not irrational. It's just tragic. Because Garp seems to believe corruption is survivable, but chaos isn't. That oppression under law is still preferable to total chaos. That if he leaves, the only people left in power are monsters and extremists. So he compromises. He trains good Marines. He tries to create a better future from inside the machine. Garp's whole ideology seems built on one idea: hold the line now, fix it later. The problem is, later never came. And the story has been brutally consistent in proving him wrong. Garp spends his entire life trying to reform the system from within. And almost every major event in One Piece exists as evidence that it never changes. Ohara still burned. God Valley was wiped off the map and rewritten as a heroic victory. Ace still died. Sakazuki, a man who embodies absolute justice at its most extreme, rose to become Fleet Admiral. The Marines didn't become kinder. If anything, they became more extreme, more authoritarian, more willing to kill in the name of order. All of this makes Garp more like a failure. Because what has his loyalty actually accomplished? He didn't stop the atrocities. He didn't protect his family. He didn't change the institution. The world kept getting worse anyway. I think Oda deliberately wrote this character this way. Every major ideological force in the story keeps moving past Garp. Dragon is actively shaking the world from the outside. Luffy is inspiring freedom everywhere he goes. Even secret groups like Sword exist because the official structure can't be trusted. Garp stayed in the machine to fix it. And the saddest part is, Garp's failures is also personal. For a man obsessed with protecting the future, he keeps losing the people closest to him. Dragon, Ace, even Luffy. And I think Garp wanted Ace and Luffy to become Marines because he wanted to hide them inside the machine. If Ace became a Marine, maybe the world wouldn't kill him for being Roger's son. If Luffy became a Marine, maybe he'd be protected from being Dragon's child. And maybe, deep down, Garp thought if enough good people entered the system, it could eventually become what he always wished it was. Even Kuzan eventually walked away. And yet, for all of Garp's failures, the world may still change because of him. Because the people shaped by Garp are doing more to change the world than Garp ever did himself. Luffy doesn't care about reforming the system or understanding it. He just breaks chains wherever he goes. Dragon is attacking the system from the outside, exposing the world government and inspiring nations to rebel. Kobe might be the purest version of Garp's dream, a Marine who actually protects people first. And Kuzan, in his own twisted way, is proof that the system failed so badly it pushed good men into darkness. That's the contradiction that makes Garp fascinating. He spent his life trying to preserve order through the Marines, but his real legacy may be the people dismantling, replacing, or exposing that order. Luffy represents freedom. Dragon represents revolution. Kobe represents reform. Kuzan represents disillusionment. Garp didn't create one answer to the world's problems. He accidentally helped create all of them. And I think that might be Oda's point. Garp is not the man who changes the world. He is the man who raises the people who will. So, what box would you actually put Garp in as a character? He's obviously not evil, but his lack of concern ultimately leads to moral ambiguity. He's not some gleeful dog of the world government, but he's not innocent either. Good intentions don't erase complicity. Hating the celestial dragons doesn't erase serving them. Loving Ace doesn't erase failing him. Garp is what happens when a good man keeps compromising for a future he may never live to see. And I think that's why Garp is one of Oda's best written characters. He feels human. He feels frustrating. He feels real. A man caught between order and freedom, family and duty, present suffering and future hope. Powerful enough to change the world and psychologically incapable of doing it himself. And in a story full of dreamers, revolutionaries, kings, and gods, Garp might be the most human of all. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. And if there's another character you want me to break down like this, drop a name in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe, and hit the bell if you want more. Thank you for watching. Seriously.